Living with Cancer SA is a patient-led organization committed to strengthening the voice of people living with cancer in South Africa. Through advocacy, community engagement, and the development of the country's first patient-led cancer registry, the organization works to ensure that patient experiences, data, and lived realities contribute to better understanding, research, and support for those affected by cancer. As part of this work, Living with Cancer SA produces a range of conversations that explore the realities of cancer beyond the clinic. What Cancer Reveals is the organization's third podcast series and introduces a new perspective on how cancer is understood and discussed. This series steps outside the familiar stories of diagnosis, treatment, and survival. Instead, it explores what cancer exposes about systems, power, data, identity, and the invisible work that patients, families, and caregivers are often forced to carry in order to survive and to be heard. Each episode invites guests to reflect on what cancer revealed in their own journeys and in the systems around them. These conversations move beyond inspiration and awareness to examine the deeper truths cancer uncovers about healthcare, society, and what it really means to live after illness. What Cancer Reveals is an invitation to listen differently, to question what we think we know about cancer, and to recognize the knowledge that emerges from lived experience. What Cancer Reveals is a podcast series that steps outside the familiar stories of diagnosis, treatment, and survival. Each episode explores what cancer exposes about systems, power, data, identity, and the invisible work patients, their families, and caregivers are forced to do to survive and be heard. This series moves beyond inspiration and awareness to examine the truths cancer uncovers about healthcare, society, and what it really means to live after illness. Good afternoon and welcome to the Living with Cancer podcast series. Today we have Colleen King, who's joining us for episode number 10. And today we're going to discuss what Cancer Reveals about not having to face cancer alone. So welcome, Colleen. Thank you so much for joining. So perhaps we could start off with just sharing a little bit about your journey.
Thank you for your welcome. Nice to be with you. Well, my journey I'm sure is different to other people's. It's a personal thing, each and every one of us. Mine came quite late in life.
Okay, so and when were you diagnosed, Colleen?
In about 2021, 22. And I was diagnosed, I had a small lump and I found it in the December. And I thought to myself, this is not the time of year that you want to have this sort of news to give your family if it definitely is. So I went in the January to have a mammogram. And I had previously, some years ago, had a cyst filled with fluid that had also been mistaken for a tumor. And because it was mistaken for a tumor, they aspirated it. They aspirated it, and I couldn't have. Sorry, I've been distracted. They aspirated it, and it wasn't a problem at all. My son was going overseas as an exchange student, and I didn't want to make a hoo-ha about it. So anyway, in the January that year, it was clear. And then when they found this one, I thought it was the same thing. It was also just maybe a bump from something and a collection of fluid. I was a bit shocked when they came back and said, there is a problem. And I just said to her, are you absolutely sure? And she said, yes, I am. So that for me was a blow because I was in such a positive frame of mind. And my husband was sitting outside in the car. So I had to go out and tell him. Well, Dr. Smilk offered me the opportunity of having biopsies done, and they did that and they confirmed everything. And then I went to see Carol Ben, Professor Ben, who's a wonderful lady, and she took care of me. She put me on oral estrogen, and I thought to myself, my goodness, this is easier than I thought. Just take a little tablet and the problem is gone. But it wasn't, because it certainly did. It was a slow growing tumor, and it did help, obviously, but after a time, it needed to be attended to. And Dr. Ben organized a mastectomy, so I had a right mastectomy. And I coped very well with that because I think, coming from a nursing background, I've seen a lot of these things, and I actually underestimated the impact that that sort of surgery does to your whole system. It was a bigger blow to my physiology than I would have believed. Um, so I was only in hospital for a day, and then I came home. And my
Mm.
husband looked after me. Thank God for that. He was wonderful. And it was quite challenging for him, I'm sure, because it was quite a large cut, and he had to do dressings. And as I say, it knocked me for a loop. So it
Mm.
was more work than expected. But I still knew that there was light at the end of the tunnel, and that now it was gone, it was gone, it was gone. But of course, it was gone, and needed radiation, and it needed chemotherapy as well. So I was referred to Professor, I forget her name now, with an M, at Johannesburg Hospital. Lovely lady too, and she put me through the oncology department there. And there too, I found I had a positive outlook. I went
Mm.
into that thinking, I'm going to get through this and
Mm.
I'm going to be fine. And I did, and I was.
Oh, that's lovely.
My big problem arose in that in the chemo, there's a lot of anti-emetic, and I had a lot of Maxilon given to me. And that elicited Parkinson's disease, which is a bigger problem than the cancer and
Mm.
can't be wished away. And
Mm.
so that's for me the worst part.
Mm. And and tell me, so the hardest part about your journey was the, so you spoke a little bit about your receiving the news and then telling the family. Would you say that was probably the most difficult, or do you think it's now post and the fact that you've now got to deal with Parkinson's?
Well, at the time, I felt very concerned about telling my family because my two sons and daughter-in-laws were at that time in Toronto. They lived in Canada.
Mm.
So I had to tell them about it telephonically. And that was like having to accept it. I had
Mm.
to ingest it to be able to tell my husband. I had to almost believe it. And to tell my family, I had to accept it. So at that point, there was a transition of maybe it's not, and maybe with this, and maybe with that. And I realized as I told my boys, it was serious.
Mm.
And I must say, they did very well with it. Everyone was very good with it. And I think I was quite strong about it. Certainly, going to the Johannesburg Hospital was the right thing. It's an excellent unit with excellent staff, and I have not a complaint to mention. The staff were lovely and still are, because I still go there.
Maybe we could just pick up from the medical team and the support that you had and the support that you received, and you were sharing about talking to your boys about it. So they are away, you here. Maybe we could pick up from there.
Okay. Yeah, it was difficult telling them and for them to accept it. But they were both very good about it. And they came to visit me when they could, so that I knew, so that they made a visit here. I don't think the grandchildren understood, but I must say that I was very happy, as I said, with the Joburg Hospital and still am. I think they're an excellent unit and I admire their tenacity. They've got some good staff there. It wasn't easy going because we have to go very early in the day to get into the queues, and there's no parking at the Johannesburg Hospital because of the fire. So if you don't go at 5 in the morning, you don't get a parking spot, and that means you don't get into the queues. So after that, I just fell into their regime. They they would tell me when my next appointment was, and my husband would take me in, and we'd have the chemo done. And the chemo didn't upset me in any way. I really managed it very well. That, of course, is over. And after that, I was referred for radiation.
Mm.
But the radiation never happened. It was a long queue, a long waiting queue, and it never happened. And then at the end, it was 3 years in the waiting. And even Carol Ben said it's a bit late now. You don't need to have it done. I can't say too much about the actual impact. I found it uncomfortable at times and still do, the mastectomy scar. But I go back every year for my mammogram, and the last 3 years, it's been clear. So I feel I'm in remission.
So, Carol, how did you find living with cancer, our support group?
Well, that I think was on Carol Ben's rooms, where she has a lot of literature and she attracts a lot of interest. And she had a lovely staff there too. She has been marvelous to me. And that was how I came to contact you people. And I found it was very uplifting to know that there were all these people who had the similar problems. Some of them much younger, some of them much older, some of them in much worse condition than me. I had already met that kind of person in the clinics at Joburg Hospital, where you realize that you actually are quite lucky. I remember losing my hair. It was falling out all over this place. And my husband eventually shaved my head clean. And having to put a beanie on for the first time was a marker for me. It was unusual. I felt strange with that. And then kind people at the clinic made me some more beanies. So I had a whole bunch of them. And everybody who heard my problem, my friends, gave me more. So I had a lot more to give away afterwards.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. So,
And people were very uplifting. They would always be encouraging and they never spoke negatively. And I think that's amazing.
and Carol, how would you say hearing someone else's cancer journey and their story, how do you think it's changed your own perspective about your own journey?
It made me less introspective. I
Mm-hmm.
realized that this was out there and it was something that affects all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds. That I, in fact, was fortunate in that I had a good family environment and a good support system in my family, and that I had access to good nutrition and that sort of thing, where so many of these other folks don't have. And I wish I could change that. And I noticed that there are a lot more support groups opening up all over. The churches are opening their support groups. And I think overall, more is being done for cancer patients by giving it life, giving it air.
Mm.
Changed my journey, and that mine could have been much more negative had I not had that sort of support.
And Colleen, what about someone else's journey has stayed the advice or listening to what has stayed with you and what have you continued to maybe apply when you've been part of the support group and you've heard what someone else has done or what the outlook's been that you've continued to live by or reflect on?
I think keeping myself in a calm condition, I try to meditate, and say I spend a lot of time with my prayers in the evening, more than I used to spend. And I'm quite surprised at the amount of religious fervor that there is amongst people with cancer. They have great belief in their own maker, whomever they see him to be. And I think that's encouraging.
You
I
know,
think
sorry, go ahead.
that something that I would have taken away, there was no special thing other than that there was always hope for tomorrow, and lots of people recover. And in the meantime, you have a good life, you have things to do,
Mm,
families to look after.
mm.
Um, you have a life to lead.
Colleen, when you joined the support group, I know that it could be quite scary because there's a whole lot of people that you haven't met and now you become quite vulnerable.
Mm.
So, what advice would you offer to someone who's a bit hesitant about joining a support group?
I would say to them, don't be hesitant at all, because you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And it's quite amazing what understanding people out there, they might be people who don't know you, but they understand where you're coming from, what that can feel like to you. And so getting positive messages on a cell phone, having your birthday remembered, or having people wish you well for certain things, it makes you feel belonging. And maybe that gives you some inner strength. Um, I think the support groups are important in that you can learn from these people. The medical staff in the hospitals are very busy, and they don't have the time to give you the detailed information that you might need. So people go with the flow and don't understand much about it. They may be talking about chemo, but they don't really know what is involved.
Mm,
And they don't know why certain things are done or not done. So this you would get on a support group where people will talk openly about, I had to have a mastectomy. And that's why I said openly, it was more of a challenge to my body than I had expected.
mm,
I'm an ICU sister by qualification, and I should have known better. I should have been more attuned to the impact that this kind of surgery makes on a person's life. But, when we nurse people with amputations and mastectomies and all sorts of serious conditions, and we don't really understand the impact it does. We see only the wound and the dressings and the drips and the IV therapy and stuff. But in fact, there is something else that happens to your body, and it's a living entity that is being assaulted and changed.
mm.
And it has to be, because you are a living entity and you need to continue. So I think it's very important to track in to to involve yourself in a support group. It takes a little confidence to come out and speak in the open. I belong to another group at my church, and I must have been there 3 or 4 or 5 times before I even said a word. I just didn't have the courage to speak out. But eventually, the time comes when you can be supportive of those people yourself, and you can reassure them that what's happening to them is not final, and that there's a lot of good to come out of it.
So, has anything surprised you about being part of this community? Maybe someone's story or how they've coped or how they haven't coped. Is there anything that's been, you know, kind of sparked your interest and thought, oh, okay, I never thought of it like that?
I've been impressed by people who've continued with very active lives, people in sport who've achieved, and people who have continued to be outstanding in their community. They haven't been pulled under by the weight of this feeling.
So, thinking about the support group, is there a message that you would like to share with someone that feels alone and maybe isn't part of a support group, but should be or is afraid to join? Is there a message that you would like to share with them?
I can just reassure anybody who hasn't belonged to a support group that there is great support to be had and great help to be had. A lot of reassurance comes from it, and the ability to ask any questions or say anything on your group is a great freedom, an opportunity to share what you've learned or to reassure people from your own experience and to learn from their experiences. And people have such varied experiences. When I first got onto this, there was a lady called Sandy who was wonderful. And she was so friendly and so upbeat, and she looked so good, and she was always smiling and always helpful. And I hadn't been on the group very long when she died in ICU. And you couldn't believe that she'd gone. She'd been so beautiful to the end. Sandy. Oh,
Yeah.
so there are lots of Sandys.
Yes. No, Sandy, she had pancreatic cancer. That's
That's right.
right. And
She was
young, she wasn't
wonderful.
even 40. Yeah.
Yeah, a young woman.
Yep. Yep. No, I know her
That's such
well.
an example to everybody.
Yeah, I know. I knew her well. I used to spend a bit of time with her too. So, so Colleen, is there anything else about your journey or perhaps words of wisdom that you'd want to share with anyone that's just been diagnosed or, is going through maybe a reoccurrence? Any words of wisdom that you have for them?
I'm not sure I have any words of wisdom at all in my whole life, but I'll have maybe some things that I could share. But I think you can't change what's happening to you. If it's happening, it's happening. And the sooner you get in touch with it and accept it and take action, the better. Don't turn your back on it like I would have liked to. Because at first I didn't manage it very well. And I didn't want to tell anybody, but telling people brings it to life and makes it real for you. And you shouldn't be afraid to share that with people because you can help yourself and you can help them. And I think helping people through hard times is a good thing. It's wonderful to be able to be kind to someone in that way and to help them understand where they're going because it's fear of the unknown that is very important. And a lot of these people don't know what's coming next, and they have no idea what to expect. So I think if you can help them through that sort of thing, it's good. words of wisdom. Do the best you can. Listen to your doctors. If they tell you to do something, do that. And I'm sure it's difficult for their families. You have to adapt to all of this. So you have to make allowance for your families as well, and the caregivers you have who are under a lot of stress. I admire the caregivers in all these respects because they take a lot of strain. And I think great kudos are due to them.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Colleen, from my side, from Living with Cancer, we value your contribution. Thank you for allowing me to share your journey with other people and to ask you your questions about a very private, but I think it sounds as though it's been a challenging journey, but you've just come out so beautifully from this. So thank you for that. And I wish you continued health and remission. And thank you for your contribution to the Living with Cancer team too.
Can I say one more thing to you, please?
Yes. Yes.
At the end of my oncology treatment, I ended up with Parkinson's, and it is a far worse affliction. So there's always something worse. And don't lose sight of that. Just deal with what you've got.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you for
Thank you.
speaking to me.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Belinda. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Be well.
Thank you.